Hi, good morning, everybody. So I'm glad to have also this opportunity to contribute to the e-MFP sharing of experiences in our working group on rural finance. And today I will introduce the topic on finance for producer organizations. And in fact, let's situate me first the topic in the larger possibilities of finance for smallholders. What I see overall is financing smallholders. Most what is done is still through self-help groups, subsistence farming, having very small farm activities that are produced through the self-help groups. But beside this, we see a growing share of activities taking place in value chain finance and also in embedded finance, linking to more structured buyers, where you can have finance channeled through payment agreements with the buyers or with supplies of interest in kind and so on. And very often here already farmer groups, organized farmer groups can play a very important role. Also, what I do in warehouse receipt lending might be related to this. And we see then the distribution of finance making use of a collaboration with cooperatives or farmer associations. Between that, you have sometimes also finance to direct individual finance for those that are strong enough to supply directly to the structured market, or to those that are supplied through a middleman or in between buyers. And there are new possibilities in mobile banking for organizing the transactions. This is also true within value chain finance or other solutions. We can make use of this kind of repayment possibilities for repaying credits and so on. But for setting a credit, what we feel is that still direct contact and proximity in the field remains important. This just to situate where we find these cooperatives and farmer associations, and very often we see it as an important link between the farmers and the market access for the smaller farmers that try to produce for larger markets or other markets than just selling the surplus production in the local markets. And very often we start from a situation where there is a kind of general distrust between farmer organization and financial institutions or even microfinance institutions, where the farmer organizations feel that they are not understood completely by the others, that the offered services are not sufficiently or not adapted to their needs and so on, and inversely where microfinance institutions tend to see everything related to farming and to agriculture as risky, and certainly also the farmer organizations as a risky investment. And there we see that just speaking about risk is the key actor where these farmer organizations have the potential to play a very large role. They play a role to gain access to finance for their members, but they can also have an important role in improving or reducing production risks, farmers' risks, supply risks, marketing risk, price risks, quality risks, and so on. And so reducing for a big part the risk into the supply of the credit. And very often I find that there is a tendency by farmer organizations or in agricultural finance to go for demands for insurance products or guarantee funds or whatever other this kind of instruments to risks, while the key of the solution is probably in the high probability or opportunities that exist within farmer organizations themselves to improve risks and to deal with risk reduction. And as I already have presented a year ago in the European Microfinance Summit in an AMT study, there is no need to think that there are more risks in farming activities than in other entrepreneurial activities, and that credit, when well managed, and also the risk mitigation is well managed, then also the financing farming activities can be possible through credit. So then I will base my case study of today. In fact, I will present a case study out of Rwanda, where we were asked to work on finance of microfinance institutions to farmer organizations. And for this work, we were in fact inspired by a work that was ongoing by the Dutch platform, where all the Dutch organizations, you see their logos on the screen, where all those organizations were thinking and bringing together case studies of practices they have, good practices of finance for smallholders through producers' organizations, and how to deal with the risks in farm finance. And what we said, okay, when we now have to, this was presented also already last year in the European Microfinance Platform, and our idea was, okay, when we have to start a new program in this field, can we not tap out of this experience, out of the good practices, and I just under the logo, let's try it, let's apply and see what it gives, to see how it works and what works. And so when we go through the 14 case studies that were taken up in this study, I saw 3 big lessons that came out of it. And those 3 big lessons were the framework of a new program that we then set up. The first was that sometimes it's just getting to know each other that's enough to create finance possibilities, linkage, working on contacts, and getting knowledge between MFIs and farmer organizations to advance. The second field of work is that there is a big work that can be done on risk mitigation and especially on screening of risk. Know the risk, analyze the risk, have this risk, and to make a selection of farmer organizations, of producers that are well mitigating or managing their risks. And finally, it's also on the side of the farmer organizations itself that they can build on solid business cases, document their credibility, their track record, and see that they have the capacity of providing. Because the challenge for the MFIs is finding those farmer organizations that are credible, that are doing a good job, and then the risk is manageable, and to eliminate those that are not yet there and maybe strengthen them in another way to get there. And so let's come now to the case I worked in. It was a case in Rwanda, and we were invited to a Dutch NGO called Spark. And Spark was working with 100 farmer cooperatives, and they have a model where they have like a coach or a trainer per 7 to 8 farmer organization that works on topics like improving the business case, working on market to access to finance, improving management within the cooperatives, having a better track record of the cooperatives, having their accounting data available, and so on. And they came to us because they said, okay, you see these farmer cooperatives, they say they have problems with access to finance. They lack access to finance, they lack good access to finance, and they know that Ecoterrafina, our organization, is working on product development of agri-finance products with a range of MFIs. They say it would be interesting to bring the projects together. That Terrafina could work with microfinance institutions like Duterimbre, Ecohesa, Visigara, Ihunga, Amaseserano, Umutangua, to develop products and to come towards a solution for the access to finance problem of the farmer cooperatives. Based on this case, we said, okay, to make it work, let's apply the good lessons, the good practice of what's already known. You don't need to innovate all the time. When you do in the most simple, most effective way, you can bring in the good existing practices, maybe it works. So we overrun the practices. First good practice, linkage. So we invested in linking both together to this kind of regional meetings where the MFIs could present their offer to the farmer cooperatives, and the farmer cooperatives presented their needs to the MFIs. And for the MFIs, it was important to learn the needs and to do need identification of the farmer cooperatives. And at the other end, the farmer cooperatives could ask details on the already existing offer of the MFIs. And there were like this kind of speed dating moments where they could exchange contacts and set up a follow-up meeting later on. And this was repeated close to the farmer organization at different places in Rwanda, which is already a small country, as we think that proximity of contact is still very important. Later on, there were also other kind of social performance management tools used like client satisfaction, follow-up, and so on, as we see the focus in listening to the client and follow-up as the client as part, as key to the solution. Very simple things. The second element of the study of the Dutch platform said it's important to look at the farmer cooperatives on their track record, on their business case, to bring in quality of the risk mitigation and all the knowledge on this with the farmer cooperatives. And we found this was already taken up in the program with Spark, which is complementing the study. And so then the third element, which is the big element, is in the product development, have a good look on what's the risk and having this risk assessment and having the capacity of e-MFIs to improve the risk assessment of the cooperatives. Is this cooperative mitigating effectively the risk, that the credit risk that can put into question the repayment later on? Are they ready for credit or not? And so that was our key point of the program. We introduced a kind of system of credit scoring within the MFIs so that they could assess better the risks of the different cooperatives involved. In this case, we worked through an expert panel methodology because credit scoring based on statistical data is not possible, because on farmer cooperatives there are no available databases of credit already given through this kind of structures. So we identified risk categories. We were already inspired by the program also presented in the study of the Dutch platform that was carried out in Ethiopia on what kind of risks there might be when working with this kind of farmer organizations. And then per category, we thought, okay, what are good questions to see if this risk is well taken up? These questions are tested, are calibrated for scoring. There were several meetings. It was translated into the Kinyarwanda language, and then it was corrected and so on. An interesting exercise we also did was checking the scores we had on the historic documentation of the cooperatives Spark had. Spark had already also the years before information on these cooperatives, and a lot of these cooperatives already, we found out later, received credits. Those that received credits, we already applied this kind of new tool on the old documentation to see how the cooperatives would come out historically and what credit decision might have been taken when the tool was available. As we have seen, the credits were taken before on a more on a basis without really investigation and just knowing, trying to see, okay, will this finance a cooperative or not? It was more intuitional. And that was the first big surprise we had in the baseline. We saw the access to credit was not the issue. 53 out of the 100 cooperatives that were involved already had received a credit in the past. The issue was that most of them failed repayment. 47% failed timely repayment. Some repaid later on, but that was the thing. And so with this credit scoring applied to the historical database, we saw with the score that would come out of the questions we had, a big lot of them with scores between 65% would anyway not have been granted a credit at that moment, and it might have been already before improved the repayment of 47%. The 47% cases would have reduced up to something like 25% of cases where a problem turned up. So this already felt us, give us some confidential, made us more confident to say, okay, already applying this would have reduced enormously the past failures in repayment and makes credit more accessible, because now it's not accessible because they try out, there is failure, the MFI see the risk of repayment not coming through, and this is blocking access to the market, while just the farmer organizations have the big potential to win in better mitigation of risk in farm finance. And so also based on all these results, we had this right kind of revisions of the scoring of the cooperatives. We have some piloting of it in the programs we had, and maybe I can just share you in the few minutes that are left over some of the points of the evaluation, the final evaluation that came out. the final results. In the program, we have seen that finally access to finance of cooperative improved from 53 to 69. So it's not that because we did this kind of screening that the access to finance reduced of it, but we have seen that already the linkage was very successful. And although nothing was obligatory and all the meetings were just on free invitation, that 75% of the cooperatives turned up and participated in these meetings where all the MFIs were present or represented to present also their programs. When we see on the reject of credits, there was like a 20% of the introduced credits that was rejected based on the screening done. But we saw that now there was a delay in repayment in 19% of the cases, while it was 47% before. So the selection was on a better basis, and also the preparation with the help of the Spark coaches was of a higher level, so that the quality of the cooperatives itself was already better. 19% of cases, but this was more on partly repayment problems. It was just like a last part that was not repaid. So if we express it in portfolio at risk, now we ended after the first year of trial with a portfolio at risk of 3%. In the end, we had also a satisfaction survey, and the satisfaction survey was asked to each of the 100 cooperatives. But not all the cooperatives worked together or had an experience of working with an MFI. So we decided to split this group, and we see that it was very different. Those that finally started working with MFIs that introduced a credit file, we saw a satisfaction with the offer and the working style of the MFIs of 89%, and a lot of details per element of the offer received. But those that were not working with MFIs, we asked also the available offer and how they look to the financial possibilities that there exist in the market, if they are well adapted to what's needed by farmer producer organizations. And there we saw that only 51% is satisfied. So those that do not know the MFIs, have no contacts, have a quite negative vision on what's the possibility in finance for them. These were more or less the key results that came out of it. Time is very short, so I need to limit in 50 minutes to present the big lines of what we have done. And it would be very nice to have a broad exchange and discussion on issues relating to finance through producer organizations with you, who might even more experts than us in this matter. So it's always nice to exchange. I thank you very much anyway so far.